Hello, welcome to Interaction Design Module 2 Tutorial 7. What are we doing today? We're going to be looking at making a chatbot. We're going to talk about what is a chatbot, how do they work, common uses. So a chatbot is a computer program that simulates and processes human conversation. How does that kind of thing work? Well, it uses artificial intelligence, automated rules, natural language processing, and machine learning. Chatbots process data to deliver responses to requests of all kinds. What are some uses of chatbots? Well, they're often used for improving user experience, for doing hands-free navigation, and easing accessibility. They fit right in with this summative moment in the module as we've looked at frequency analysis and adding audio, doing text to speech, speech to text, even using a bit of the machine learning components. All of those tie in to what we're doing today. Probably less of the machine learning at this stage, but there's going forward, if you were to keep building anything with a chatbot, you would probably find that that's the future of chatbots. Some things to think about as we are going in and building the chatbots. We're going to be designing conversations in a lot of ways. And you need to be thinking about, from that position, whether you're going to kind of dig in and play with that, right? That there are these ideas of having like short conversations and long conversations. It's actually quite important with a chatbot because depending on how much you add to the script that controls the conversation, you want to decide like how much do you want it to branch out, right? So if you want to do a really specific job, right, that way it can be shorter development, you can test things out really easily. But if you want to do something bigger that's going to have a lot of different options for each point, you need to basically follow all of those paths. And in some ways, you need to be thinking about different ways people might ask the same question over and over again. So there's a lot of sort of repetition as you're doing your user testing. We're going to be playing with P5 chatbots, and we're going to be using a library called RiveScript. So RiveScript is this tool that is used for creating chatbots in a variety of different coding languages. For adding a chatbot to P5, we're going to be focusing on the JavaScript version. And this will become a bit important in your research because you'll find that there are limitations to the way we can script things in RiveScript for JavaScript. And some of the workarounds you might find on the internet when you do your own sort of research digging in might work for specific things like Python, right? But they may not work for the JavaScript version, and you're going to need to be prepared to test those things. And if they don't work, then you backtrack. All right. So let's start by looking at RiveScript itself. So you can see right on their webpage, RiveScript is a simple scripting language for chatbots with a friendly, easy to learn syntax. The syntax is really easy, and I would say, and you'll see once we start digging into it, the issues have to do with how much control you can have over the outcome with the syntax. And I've taken it to a certain point, and you guys will be expected to go further with it. With RiveScript, you can create your own chatbot in Go, Java, JavaScript, Perl, or Python. And we're focusing on JavaScript. Scroll down, you can see that they give you just some different things about it being simple, powerful, flexible, and open source. Okay? And if you were to dig into their website, you would be able to find different examples of things. And again, this link will be provided. With that, we're going to look at some code. So you know what? I'm going to, let's move that out of the way. Let's bring this up. Actually, you know what? Before we do that, let's just take a look at the file. So the file you're going to get will have we'll say chatbot, and in chatbot you'll see that there's folder called brain and a folder called chatbot. And in chatbot, you'll see that I have it's called a Rive file. We have our index, and I've got 5 different sketches that we're going to walk through. And we will actually, in this brain file, you see that there's also these 4 Rive files. And so we're going to look at some different ways of using these. These are the scripting languages, or these are the scripts that are where you write your different dialogue options. So in our index, let's actually just spread this out a little bit more for a second. Okay. In our index, you can see that we've got just our basic style here. It's really just, this is set up as our development environment. At the sort of end of the tutorial, we'll look at how to add it to a header, or maybe I'll just do a separate mini tutorial just on adding it to the header. Interesting things here. So there are a couple of scripts you'll recognize, right? There's the P5, the min, the dom.min, and the sound and speech. So those are the basic ones. You can see we've also got our sketch.js. Now here you can see that we are connecting to our Rive script, the latest one all the time, right? And the script, we're using also some jQuery as well. More of this is a dependency that Rive script uses. So these are all within the HTML code, and then you can see that we actually have in our body, we have just a little bit of stuff with, we have some text, please type your response below and submit, and then we have an input div, and we've got a button, and then we have an output. And that will all make sense when we pull this up. Let's take a look at sketch 1. So in sketch 1, and you can see that we're using a bit of a combination of arrow functions with, when there's a method that are within the setup, I'm just leaving those as functions. I do find actually methods within especially the setup, they're easier to see what they are. So if you remember that a method is a function inside another function. So setup is a function, this loading done is a function. But let's start at the top. So this first we can see has no canvas. So we're basically running this all just in the DOM. We have a let, which is this let bot, and this is so creating a bot object using the Rive script library. So we have this bot.load file. This is actually the way that Rive script gets access to these, and you can see that this is that greeting.rive, which is right here, right? And after that we have a then, right? So this then is gives you is a function for loading being done, right? We've just called it that. This is the loading done function, which is right here. We could call this whatever we want, but what it is it's indicating that the loading is done. The next one is this catch, which also has a loading error function, and that's down here. And the loading, so you can actually kind of tell from the two of them what they do. So the loading error function is if there's a problem, and actually it's only from here to here. If there's a problem, it'll say error when loading files, right? So right within this sort of load file, it gives you the error. You have to that gets attached, and then the loading done. And in the loading done, you can see that it also in the console log it'll say bot has finished loading. So that'll let you know that it has loaded these files, okay, however many you have. In this case, we just have one. This bot sort replies is important because that is it going through all of the different replies that are going to be within these different Rive scripts. And you'll see that, like when we look at the Rive script, you'll see that they're actually a very sort of simple language the way they're built. You can add it, interesting. Rive script will remember user data, so you can add usernames, right? Now for us, that's going to be called local user, and I can't remember if local user comes up in the HTML. It's under user input, so I think the local user file actually gets used. Yeah, it's down here. Let reply equals bot. So it actually connects to the the local user further down. All right, you can see that here's the, yeah, so we have our username, bot.reply. This is where it does all the work. And it's, what's interesting is that this is happening in the setup, but this continues to run. All right. So a lot is happening in the background of this. So in fact, you'll see like it's not very long code, but that's because what is happening here is actually happening on the web. So it is connecting to RiveScript, and it is any work that's being done is being done on the web that way. All right. It's going to reply with the username to hello. There's another then, like another function, a reply function, right? And do we have the function reply? I think it's just... I know we have let reply happening down here, but that's not treating it like a function. I think this is just going to be a method within the, like it's just a then method within the function, and this is actually what it's doing. Yeah, this is just a nested function. So console.log, so it's going to console.log, the bot says, plus whatever the reply is. So remember, so this reply that's connected here is all going to be based on one of the sort replies that comes out of the script that you write. And then you can see that it's putting the output to output.html reply. And if we kind of just jump down here, you'll see that in fact we have this let output equals select output. And you can see it's using the output from the DOM. All right. We probably could have put that up at the very top. Yeah, that actually, I think in future ones I may do that. But that's fine for now. I've set a set timeout for the console log pause between. This may or may not make much of a difference because it's really just adding a timeout to the console log, right? But and this also be worth testing to see if it makes a difference getting it out of there. Why do I have it there? So I've been playing with and you'll see that when you start to experiment with it, same kind of thing. There are issues around the bot listening. And in this case, it doesn't matter as much because it's going to be text-based, the first one we're going to do. But there's a gap between it listening to the speaker, its own speaker running, and hearing its own voice as we go forward. And so I've been playing a bit using timeouts just to kind of like try to pause it so it's not listening during certain times, like while it's speaking. But I have actually found that that's a bit of an issue, and I haven't found a perfect workaround for it. So that's just me experimenting with that. But we'll leave it for now, and we may comment that out. Then you can see we have that function loading error that we've already talked about. We have those three variables we've talked about. So we have roulette button. So there's the equals select submit. So these are in the DOM. There's the submit, the user input, and the output. And if we go back to the HTML, you can see there's the user input, the submit, and the output. That's where those connect to. So it's also kind of cool because you're seeing like how you can use the P5 to connect things that are inside your sketch directly to the DOM, right? So that's interesting. And then you can see we have just a basic button that is using mouse pressed, and it's going to execute the chat when you mouse press, okay? This is the chat function, right? And then you can see here's the function chat. And again, this is it all. If you notice that we have a setup, and there's nothing else. There's no draw, right? So this is also a method. So you can see that this function, which is a method called chat, allows for, so let input equal user input dot value. So it's going to take the text or the value that is from the characters from the user input, right? It's then going to it creates this reply variable, which is the bot.reply, which is going to connect, again, that local user we talked about, the input from the local user, and then the function, which is, again, a nested function, is just going to be using the reply, and the output.html is going to be using that reply. Okay? And remember, that output is connected to the output in the DOM. So what does that look like? So let's pull that up. There we go. Oh, you know what? Let me go to here. Close that one. There we go. Remember, you do need to be on your index in order to load it correctly. So all of this is in the DOM. None of this is in P5. You can see that please type your response below and press submit. And if we go to the, oh, we're at the index, you can see there it is. So the text is here. You can change that text however you like. Please type your response below and press submit. And the bot is, hi, what's your name? And I think we might be able to type hello. Oh, and you can't press enter. You need to press submit. Oh, hi, what's your name? Oh, so my name is Steve. Nice meeting you, Steve. I don't know if I have how are you. You know what? Before I go any further with those, and this is where the real sort of basic level of being able to chat with this thing matters, is let's take a look at this greeting.rive while we're looking at that. Let me close that a bit. I've been expanding this as I've been going, just kind of playing with it. And again, you're going to start off getting all this. So this is where you begin your experimentation with the dialogue process. So right at the top here, this is something you don't mess with, right? You can see there's an exclamation, version equals 2.0. This tells Rive script which version it's running. So don't worry about that. What I want you to pay attention to is this process. And there's a couple of syntax things here that I'm actually finding are working back and forth a little bit, one way, a little bit the other way. And so I would say that it's going to take a little bit of user testing on my part on you guys. So I have been finding kind of different results and not seeing a pattern enough. I need to get more people kind of looking at it. But let's talk about what that means. Plus is whatever you say, whatever the user, whatever the person, whatever is going to happen in the submit, okay? The negative is the response. This is what the bot can say back. So if you say hello, it will say, oh, right. Hi, what is your name? Which is right there, okay? It seems that it's fine, at least in written form, to have not just grammar, but punctuation, commas, exclamation marks, right? But in fact, a lot of time these things mean things in code, right? So it's working okay for the text. We'll see how it works when it's speaking it. You cannot have any type of punctuation in what the user says. So you can't have a comma. You can't have question marks. You just have the words themselves. And you can see that at some points I have them sort of within brackets and others not. And in fact, it's been kind of back and forth on that. I would also mention that with the user, everything has to be in lowercase, including the first word, right? Or the first letter. So this part, I'm actually going to test this a little bit right here. I'm going to save that. Hello. Whoops. Submit. We already know that one. Okay, what about... let's go from my name is Steve. Nice to meet you, Steve, to hi. Hi, what's your name? So so in fact, the brackets have been just a little bit of an odd thing, and the explanation for them is unclear from what I have been able to find, but I'm hoping that with enough of you guys kind of digging in, you might be able to find. So I'm going to leave this like this. So some of them have the brackets, some of them don't. Also to kind of have you guys go dig a bit deeper into that. It's similar on the responses, on the negatives, where there are rules around the uppercase and lowercase, and it seems that with the uppercase, it will always go to an uppercase response. And so, for instance, so if we go, let's try this one. So we have no worries, has a capital N, and we're going to have nice meeting you too. So how about nice meeting you too? Thanks for talking to me. No, it went to that one just fine. And if I save that one, oh, nice meeting you too. Went right to no worries. Oh, and there's a bit of a typo, and they kind of show up that way. No, it seems to be actually working pretty well there. Good. If you find, though, with your work that sometimes it makes a difference whether it's capitalized or not, I have been opting for capitalized, just so you know, except on this one where I've just kind of left it like this. All right. This final one here won't really come up as much at this stage because unless I do submit, yeah. So see, if I press submit and there's nothing there, it's responding with these words. Can I speak a little closer to the mic? Your voice is a bit hard to hear. This is prepping for once we're doing this with actual voice, which is what we're going to go next. Okay, so I've left this one greeting that's sort of out within the rest of them just for this first sketch, right? But all the rest of the sketches are going to, well, actually, I shouldn't say that. We're going to work with this greeting one as our experiment one, and when we get to sketch 5, we're going to actually work with a host of them, a group of them, okay? So let's go to index. Let's add sketch 1. Oh,
hello there. Bit hard to hear.
Hello.
Can you say that again?
Hello.
Speak a bit closer to the mic, please. Hi, what is your name?
This one I have actually, I think as I kept working with it, this sketch 1 is a little bit funny where it's added the voice to it, but it's also still, is it God-to-God speech function? So it's actually, yeah, no. Okay. You know what? So sketch 1 turned out a little funny that way, actually. I moved on from sketch 1 so much now. It's kind of funny going back to it. So basically all it is it's like the first sketch, but I've added the speech onto it. It's triggering, and it's using those different greetings. It's not actually trying to listen. It's just responding to the greetings that I've built into that greeting rive, right? For things when it's not getting a response. But it is funny that it's looking for a response beyond the user submit. All right, let's move on to the next one. Yeah, and you will find that depending on how loud you have your speaker on, it can affect this. And that's another issue that I've been digging through, and I haven't been able to find people that have had a good solution for it, where the bot is responding to its own voice, right? But that's fine for now. So go to index. Let's pull up sketch 2. Whoops. All right, and in this one, we're going to get rid of the DOM. So I'm going to now.
Your voice is a bit hard to hear.
There we go.
So
now you can see that we're.
Can you say that again?
Hello.
Can you say that again? Hi, what is your name?
My name is Steve.
Speak a bit closer to the mic, please.
My name is Steve.
Nice to meet you, Steve.
Nice to meet you too.
Glad you have taken the time to chat.
So you can see that there's like a bit of the dialogue happening based on the actual options that I've added right here into this. Now, when you start to do some searches for different scripting options, you'll actually find that there are lots out there, and that's one of the places you can actually dig into this, because you'll see that you know what, let's look at the code. So in the code, you can see that I've got a speech variable, an input variable, a text reply variable, and a let responses array, right? Let bot new Rive script, so that's creating the Rive script object. We have in our setup, now we have a canvas, which is obvious. You can see that, so responses.push. Now this is interesting because responses is actually something that, it's this array, right? And I'm using the push. So if you remember what push is, you're gonna add on to the array, right? So this is pushing welcome hello there. So if I start this, that welcome hello there is this welcome. Oh, wait a minute. I have two welcome hello there. Oh, I see. That's interesting. So one is the push that has the comma, and one is the speak, which is welcome hello there. Isn't that funny? But it's interesting because that's the way to tell them apart that way. So let me start that again. So welcome hello there. You can see that that's coming off of this push, which is basically adding on to the array. So it starts with welcome hello there. You can see I've just added this. That's the font we're using. That's all that means. By adding the speech into it, right, you can see that we have this voice ready, which is just going to be connecting the different voices. We're not really using that at this stage, but it is going to connect the web voice to it, right? But we're not doing other voices on this one. We're going to add that in, I think, either 3 or 4. And then you can see that the actual speech.speak, so it's going to say that. And you remember that when we did the text to speech, this is all basically taken from that. We have our bot load file, getting that greeting.rive. We have our same function. None of this is any different. Error is still the same. So this is all going to run the same throughout the sketches. And then you can see down here that we've got that speech rec. I'm going to actually put let speech rec there. Okay. Equals new P5 speech rec. You can see it's using English US, and that might be a place to play with. If you're an international student, you might want to play with this because this might have an effect that way. I've not played with this enough to know. But what it is doing is it's triggering the got speech function, right? So this let speech is creating this speech rec object, and it's triggering the got speech function. We have continuous and interim, continuous set to true, interim results equals false. This is pretty important for this one, to leave this as false, because it will be very difficult for it to understand what you're saying if it's constantly updating. So leave that to false. And then it's starting that speech rec right there. You can see that it only adds it when it thinks it knows what you're saying, right? Nothing here has changed. Oh, wait a minute. We didn't really talk about got speech in the last one. It was a bit... oh, you know what? This is actually the same. I think it's the same. Let me see. Might not be exactly the same. Let's talk it through. So this got speech function, we have an if statement, right? So it's taking the speech rec and the result value. And so that result value is always going to be what it thinks we're saying in here, okay? Input speech rec dot result string. Now, one thing we're not doing here is we're not parsing it, right? So it would be possible to parse it in some way, or to have it where it's looking for a certain keyword. And there are ways that you can actually have the chatbot respond to keywords, okay, as another element. But I haven't really been doing that in any of the examples I have here. It's console logging whatever that input is. And in fact, you know what? It might be good to just pull up the console. You can actually see how much language is there. Let's start that from scratch so it's easier to see. And in this case, you can see we're getting the audio context was not allowed to start. This one I don't have a button set here, but in the next few ones I do have a button set up. You can see we have that P5 voices loaded, so it's loading the voices. it's giving that P5 initial voice ready, right? So it's just setting all that stuff up we talked about further up there. Bot has finished loading. So this is loading all of the scripts. In this case, it's just the greeting.rive. And then the bot says, hi, what is your name? And we can say, hello. Oh. That's funny. Let's start that again. Hello. I'll turn it up a bit. My name is Steve. My name is Steve. Nice to meet you too. Now, I did find this happened sometimes where, and this may have just something to do with my computer, where it actually kind of triggers that the sound cuts out. And I'm just going to try to... Hello. 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 Sorry, I had to pause that for a second and reload it. So I have been finding that for me, when it goes, after you leave it for a few minutes without saying something, that it can go into a bit of a cycle, and it was no longer giving me the audio, so I had to actually restart Visual Studio Code to get it working. So if it cuts out, that's my workaround for it. It could just be my computer though, so I haven't debugged it on a different computer, so that could be that. So let's go to.
Can you say that again?
Oh, there we go. So you can now see. So I had to pause that for a second to reload it. Oh, that's me talking. Isn't that hilarious? So it will keep track of everything you say, right? And that's important to recognize. And it's also important to know that it is sending anything you say up to the Rive script server. Okay, so keep that in mind as well, that anything that you say here is kind of a security thing, right? So this is listening and sending your text or your voice as text out into the internet. Okay, all right, so what are we set to? We're on 2. What else is on there? So we were just looking at that speech. So you can see it's doing 2 things. It's doing with this reply, right? With this reply function, you can see that it's set to do speech and console. So the speech is saying whatever the reply is, and the console is saying whatever the reply is. So these are both the computer talking. All right.
Can you say that again?
This function respond, this is actually where it's taking the response that comes out of the speech recording, right? So remember that both function got speech and function respond, these are methods, right? These are inside the setup. So the function respond doesn't need to be called because it's being called in the setup. So anytime you put a function into another function, it's going to do that function, right? So in this case, the function respond is being triggered specifically in the setup. And what it's doing is it's using, so that's the name respond, and it's going to use whatever the value, whatever the value that comes out of response, right? Yeah, that's the value that it's or the parameter, right, that it's going to use. Now, responses dot push, so it's going to push into the array, this responses dot push, it's going to push whatever response is. So think of it this way: responses is the array, right? It's going to push into the array this value of whatever we get in response. And if we come back up here, remember that this one where it said responses equals push, it's going to push this as it's. So that's why it starts with this. Right? We have this in the setup, so it begins with this is like a greeting while it's also saying the greeting, right? Down in the function response, We then have responses splice. This is the only thing that keeps the response, which is the words that we're trying to remember if it's no, it's not putting our response, it's putting the bot's response. Having the bot, so what otherwise what it's going to do without this is it's going to just keep adding it on top, and it's not going to be refreshing it. So this is what's going to replace. So if you remember how splice works, it's going to go to in the array, it's going to go to position 0, which is the very first thing in the array, and it's going to replace it with the exactly. It's going to replace it with the one thing, right? So I'm trying to think if am I explaining that properly with splice. It's going to go to position 0, and it's going to is it going to replace it or update it? You know what? I think I tested that with 0, and it didn't work. Hello. Yeah, see how you can already see what it's doing. My name is Steve.
Your voice is a bit hard to hear.
My name is Steve.
Nice meeting you, Steve.
See how it's just writing over top of itself, right? So by this, we are actually going to, it's going to keep replacing what's in the array. So it's building the array as it goes. Hello.
Your voice is a bit hard to hear.
Hello.
What is your name?
My name is Steve.
Nice meeting you, Steve.
So it keeps doing that all because of this little function, right? So mess with some things. You may find this is fun to do something with, but this is actually mechanically really important to it working. In the draw, you can see there's not much here. We have our background, which is just set to like an off-white, and then we have these two text fields. So they're both set to 30. If you want to differentiate them more, you could, but I have them set to the same size. They're all using that Georgia font, which is something we declared up in the setup. You can see the first one is using red. So in fact, I kind of have them upside down here, right? And I don't have them labeled at all. But you can see that the one is red. It's 25500, so that's RGB, right? It's aligned to the center, and you can see that I have it set to width 2, height divided by 2, which would be right in the middle, so it's this one. The second one, same size. The fill is set to blue, so it's 0, 0, 255. And you can see that this is where, again, a piece of the mechanical puzzle of this working. This is creating a for loop so that it goes through the array, and it's updating the array, the text. For the text, it's updating it using the responses I, which is going to be that responses, right, and whatever the next one is in the length. That should be dot. You know what I'm also going to do? I'm going to just put these in the other order. So you guys, when you guys get it, you'll get it like this.
Hello there.
And here I might just put, this one is the bot voice, or bot voice / text, and then this one,
your voice is a bit hard to hear.
let's actually put that here. I know that some people are going to like this a lot cleaner like that, so I'll just put it like that. And we're going to call this human
Can you say that again? Maybe speak close to the
voice
mic.
text.
Can
There
you
we
say
go.
that again?
All right. So that's a little bit cleaner, just so you guys can see it. And we'll also call this blue. Blue bot,
Your voice is a bit hard to hear.
red, human.
Your voice is a bit hard
There.
to hear.
Okay. So that's a nice, easier commented syntax for you guys to use while you're going ahead and playing with this. Okay. Let's jump into looking at Sketch 3.
Welcome. Hello there.
What's new with Sketch 3? A lot of this stuff's going to be the same. Oh, I know what it is. Very, very subtle. Very subtle. So if you notice here, and this is such, it's so subtle, but I put it in, I should have put a comment on it. So background 220, I just have this set to the 220, and in sketch 3, you can see that I've added an alpha. And what this is doing is it's just adding a really subtle fade. And you'll notice that. Hello. See that? It's just adding that little bit of a fade going on, right? So it's such a nuance. I didn't even notice it. But something to keep in mind. And I'm going to, other than that, I'm actually going to take this. And I want to add it here so that you guys are getting sort of that similar from one to the next. There we go. Oh, let's make these 50 though, so you can actually see the difference between that. There we go. Hello.
Hi, what is your name?
My name is Steve.
Nice to meet you, Steve.
Nice to meet you too.
Thanks for talking to me.
There we go. So you can see the way that that greeting is working out. Okay. Let's take a look at sketch 4.
Maybe speak close to the mic.
Okay, now we've got some changes going on, and I may just open this up a little wee bit. So you can see that I've got a button now, right? Same old button, but you can see I've just changed it. So it's click the button to begin. And now you can see I've actually added a bunch of things to it, right? So, and this is getting into where you should be thinking about you're going for your final design, right? Where it's how can you use a bunch of the different things that we've been doing. So let's look at what we have going on here. I'll collapse it a little bit just so we can take a look at the code.
Can you say that again?
I'll just turn that down a wee bit. Okay. So what do we have? So we have now the button stuff, same button stuff as before, the let on, right? Which, because we have it off and then we turn it on as a Boolean. We have our let start button, which is going to be that same yellow start button, which is right here with all that same styling. You can see that from the, I believe, oh, let me turn that down. You can see the same from, what was it, module 2 tutorial 3 that was talking about using the microphone in and the FFT and so frequency analysis and all that stuff. That's all this. So let mic, FFT, amp, sound. So all of these are connected to using the frequency analysis. You can see that I've got that array there. I've got a big gap there. I'm going to close that a bit. In our setup, we have our create canvas, same responses, all that stuff. We are setting our Boolean on to false in the beginning. And this is taken like right out of the code from the microphone input. We have our start button, right, which is just going to be that yellow start button. We have our bot. Now, it's interesting I have the bot there instead of on the outside. I may just put that right there. We have our speech with our voice ready, same as before. You can see that we're loading the same greeting file on this one. We have our same loading done. I still have that timeout, which I'm not convinced it's doing anything, but there it is. All of that's the same. This is then adding from the text-to-speech one, where we were taking the voices loaded, and we are adjusting which voice it is. So this is setting the voice to Microsoft Mark English United States. That's the one I did right there, okay? But I also want to mention that we're not hearing it just the way, you can see that underneath it, I've got this speech object, right? That I am setting the pitch and I'm setting the rate. So I'm not using it as like a slider because I want the voice of this bot to have a personality. So I went in and kind of played with those numbers a little bit, all right? And once we start to listen to it, you'll hear that I've tailored the voice to the chatbot that I wanted for this. And then it's going to say, this chatbot is going to say, click the button to begin. So not only is it going to, it's going to read, when you come on, you read, immediately the button is going to say, oh, actually, where's the button? There's the button is going to say, click the button to begin. But this Microsoft Mark's voice is going to say, click the button to begin. I don't think anything's changed in the function got speech. That looks the same to me. And that's the end of the setup. We have our turn on, which, remember, this is basically exactly the same. This is just when the button is here, it does that so that you can turn it on. In our draw, there's been some other changes. I now have this. I'm using that button. Remember when we had that if on that we've used before within the tutorials? I've basically put all of these in there. So I've got the waveform. You know what? I could take that out. Confusing having a commented out thing. This is what's allowing these waveforms to work at the top, right? So it's taking the waveform, it's getting, so this is responding to the wave, sorry, this is responding to the volume. And it's using, this is all basically taken like right out of the code. So I just took the blue wave and the ellipse, and I took those out of the microphone input one, and then just added them in here. So if you want to go back and watch that one, if you want to know more about how you can add that kind of like audio visualization element to it, you're going to have to go back and watch Module 2, Tutorial 3, and that would explain about how the microphone is going to use the frequency analysis and then create those kinds of visualizations. I've made it very much like blue is the bot and red is the human, right? Okay. What else? So those are our two pieces of text. So what is this spectrum null thing doing? This is taking the audio, these waveform pieces. Oh, that's cool. Oh, it's added the stroke because of the order that I have of those two pieces of text. So right now they have a stroke on them. It's funny that they didn't have a stroke on them just based on where I had them before. Huh. So let's add a no stroke on these. So let's put a no stroke. There we go. Hello. Hello. My name is Steve. Nice to meet you too. Right, so also up here, see how it's doing that? Actually, that was an accident that it's using the blue and the red together, but it is really kind of cool the way that's working. Now, if you didn't want that to be there, what you would need to do is, so this one has fill, but see this blue wave, so right, see how it doesn't have a fill? It's actually using the fill from this fill. So if you didn't want to have that, you'd actually have to put a no fill. And if we do that, then you'll see it stays blue, right? So if you want to add a fill of its own fill, it's better to control its own fill than just to be using it off of another one. But you can see how like this draw is just cluttered, and that's kind of what I wanted. That's the point of this specific example. It's so cluttered with all this stuff, and I've got to have comments trying to keep track of what everything is, right? So the blue bot voice, the human voice, the red ellipse, the blue waveform, right? All of these things are connected that way, and they're using up a lot of space. And then at the bottom we have this mouse click function. I would say like this code is kind of a mess. It needs to be gone in, not only get the comments filled out, but it needs to just be cleaned up so that the different elements are in their own functions. And that's basically where we're going to go on the last one. The last one leads us to some fun places though. So let's go to 5. Okay. So with Sketch 5, a lot of this is going to be identical, right? So all of this is identical. You can hear maybe a little bit, though, that I've changed the voice.
Speak a bit closer to the mic, please.
Hello.
Hi, what
My name is Steve.
Maybe speak close to the mic.
My name is Steve.
I will remember to call you Steve.
What's your name?
I don't remember my name, just say your name is and then the new name.
Your name is Peanut.
Can you say that again?
Your new name is Peanut.
Can you say that again?
Your new name is Peanut.
I will remember my new name, Peanut.
There you go. So, we're going to scroll down, and all of this is identical. Now, here's where it starts to get outside of that. And this is going to be really important when we go to the header part, which I'll talk about next or in a separate tutorial. Bot.load file, you can see,
Close to the mic.
whoops, I'm just going to turn that down a bit. You can see that I've got this brain slash begin.rive, brain slash greeting.rive, brain slash test.rive, and these are all actually in an array. So it may not look like it immediately because this is broken down into these multiple lines, but this is what that would look like.
Can you say that again?
And if I spread that out, you'll see that it's bot.load file, and you see how there's the inside the brackets, there are the square brackets, which are the array. These are different elements in the array. So it's taking these three different elements, and these are coming out of this brain folder. And you can see I also have is test there too. Begin, greeting, and test. And I don't have brain.brain, right? And brain.brain just has some playing around with some. This was actually from a version that Dan Schiffman had borrowed this from Rive. And I've left it in there just so you guys can see, like, you can have it sort of like guess a number game, right? And it's interesting just because of the way it uses the syntax, right? Even the way it's telling it what to do. So this is some of the syntax that I was talking about, how you can actually have it do some pretty interesting things. I just haven't added that element to it. But you know what? It's easy to just come in here and we can actually go.
Can you say that again?
Slash brain slash what's it, brain dot, and you have to put the dot rive. There we go. Okay. All right. Now, that is how you can see how that works, but it sometimes is a little bit easier if we just put these all, we stack them now, right? Right, but it may not be obvious that that's what that is when you're seeing that that's actually just an array list, right? Now, what I want you to notice is that this, when we look at this, when we're loading an array of them, we can't put the dot there. That will actually not load. If I put the dot there and I save that, you can see that I got a bunch of errors. Right? It can't find it with the dot there. But when you load this up to your server, you need to have the dot there. And that's one of the things I want to mention that we're going to deal with the sort of header file. So if I save that, you can see that it works fine. But if we were to go to Sketch 4, you'd actually see that it was using the dot. And you might not know what that dot is for. So specifically what that dot means is it means you look at the folder before the folder. And this is actually, on a server, you need this. It won't work without this. So what's important is that when you're doing this for debugging yourself, when you start adding a bunch of different Rive scripts, because you might have different ones, right? Like a begin one or a greeting one or a goodbye one, or you might have a guessing game one, right? And like that brain.brain should actually probably be named like, guess a number, and then you would know it, and then you can just keep adding more of those in as you add more dialogue options in. But as you're testing it on, if you're using Visual Studio Code, for instance, you can't use the dot, but when you upload it to your server, you'd get an error unless you do. All right. Other than that, this is the same, the then loading, then error. You can see that I have not touched any of that. I haven't touched any of the speech rec. The voice is loaded. This time I'm using Google US English, so it's the female voice, and I've gone in and changed the set pitch and set rate of that, which is why it's not just at 1, it's at 1.1 or 0.9. So the rate, it's a little slower than it would normally be. And you could go in and play with those. And the pitch is a little higher than it would normally be. All right. My name is Steve.
I will remember to call you Steve.
Can you guess my
Can
name?
you say that again?
Whoops.
You told me your name, silly. It's Steve.
There we go. So that's from some of the other dialogue options that I've added, right? So as we go down, we'll look at some of the other changes. Turn on is the same. It's using that button. Now, in the draw, here we have the same if on. Now, look how short draw is. This is actually all of draw. Let me put that there. This is all of draw, right? What I've done is I've actually taken all of those other elements and I've just turned them into their own functions, and I'm calling the function in draw. So if you remember that draw is going to loop over and over again. So you can take whatever you put here, as long as you call it in draw, it's as soon as it hits that bot.voice, it actually jumps down, looks for bot.voice, and it does whatever is in bot.voice, bot.text, human voice, human text. So I just named those functions things that are sort of obvious, and I have cut and pasted the stuff that was in there, and I've just put them in here. And the only other thing I thought might be good to change is also, I'm going to move mouse clicked up to maybe by turn on, so that these both kind of happen before the sketch starts, right? Hello. There we go. So other than that, obviously I've gone in and played with some color, and I was looking for maybe some things that are a little more neutrally sounding, but also like I'm using color in the sort of semiotic sense of, I want to choose a color that maybe is representational of that sort of more friendlier female voice, but I didn't want it to be like a straight up pink, like it's something obviously generalized and stereotypical that way. So I chose like this sort of like peachy color. How you choose to shape the voice and then visually represent the voice is totally up to you. But this is how I did it, and I decided to go green instead of straight up blue, also because the blue is connected off into sort of like as a stereotypical boy color. I wanted to avoid that a bit with this one, so I went with a color that's maybe more ambiguous, which is this green color. And I have just been playing with, like, there's the black lines or the black stroke. I changed the stroke in the which one? In the human voice. I changed the stroke. No, you know what? It should be. Oh, I made it a white. So I made the stroke actually a white from being a black, but I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about that yet. And obviously, like, the ellipse can be, made larger or smaller. There's ways to play with all that stuff as well. And the last thing I wanted to just mention was if we go to this brain here, and you can see that in brain now I've got all these. So this is one that Rive recommends you add, this begin.rive, which has substitutions. So this is like for, I am, I'd, I would. Like, these are just sort of like substitutions in English for different ways of saying the same thing. And this sub is a way of doing that, so that hopefully when you're writing your script, this will make that easier. I've been a little bit iffy on whether it's been working as well as I'd like, but I added it in, kept it there anyway. The brain.rive is one we talked about where it's like, guess a number. The greeting rive is the one where I've been like having the most fun, just kind of playing with these different sort of greeting options. Test rive is where I've been playing with this idea of can you guess my name? What is your name? Your new name is. And so I added some of this so that there'd be a different kind of dialogue as well. Also showing that that if you have a different idea, it doesn't mean you have to go in and keep adding to the Rive script you have. You could just add another script, add it into your array, and that would get you there. Okay, so so remember, you do need HTTPS when you're adding your links to anything, right? You need to have the security certificate on the Sheridan server connected, first of all. So do not add a link to your Slate Dropbox that does not have HTTPS on it, okay? What you are going to be doing next, you're going to be experimenting with the code, but here's some places that you're going to want to expand on. When I say play with the mechanical way the code works, that means look at the voice options. Look at different ways you can tailor the type of voice it is, the pitch, the rate, all of that kind of thing, and look at how you can customize it that way. The conversation options, so the Rive scripts. How do you go into the chatbot and play with the different options to have a dialogue? Short dialogue, long dialogue. How do you play with those kinds of things? That would be playing with the mechanical way the code works. Play with the aesthetic way the code looks. There's a visual representation that I've been discussing and that you've seen through all of these different sketches, right? When we talk about semiotics, we're often talking about stereotypes. You need to go in, play with stereotypes, because now you're adding personality. This is like adding to a persona. You'd almost want to create a persona of the chatbot and then shape your visual representation around that. And the same, usual, follow your curiosity, even if it breaks the code. And a lot of things are going to break this code. And then save all of your versions. I would save a lot, right? You've seen what I have there. I would save a lot. Make sure you have something that works before you go and move away from it, right? Okay. And that's it. Go ahead. Start form storming.